Thank you, Denise. It's really great to be here. That's my fourth time now on the stage, I think. Well, I won't surprise plenty of people here by confessing that I'm a geek, and I've always been a geek. I still sleep better when my PC runs in the background. And being a geek, it means that in the early 1990s, at the age of 10 about, I asked to be a volunteer at computer shops so I could learn the actual hardware behind the software. And I remember once, so we are in 1994 right now, once a guy came into the shop asking us about the largest hard drive currently available. He wanted to buy it. And we told him that, well, that had 40 megabytes. And then he turned to me with bright eyes, asking me the question, wow, what will I do with 40 megabytes? That was such a huge space back then. And just to give you a scale about where we are right now, we all know that 1,024 megabytes equal 1 gigabyte, 1,024 of these equal 1 terabyte, and then peta, exa, and this is now the internet. About 1.52 zettabytes of information. This is what we all have to deal with every single day. The information overload is right there. But I knew that we had to somehow learn new tricks to solve this kind of problem, to tackle the information overload. So when I went to medical school, even at the age of 18, I had my own quite practical solutions for keeping myself up to date, communicating online, and I tried to tell my professors about these tricks, very practical tricks. But at the end, when I fulfilled my childhood dream and I became a doctor, I finished PhD in genomics, I had to be honest with myself and I wasn't satisfied enough. I felt like I couldn't merge my different selves, my doctor self, my scientist self, and my geek self into one profession. Therefore, 3 years ago, I had to design my own profession. That's how I'm becoming a medical futurist. But what I saw after the first few years was that a huge wave of technological changes is coming towards medicine and healthcare, and it's going to change dramatically everything. What I also saw was that no one is prepared. I mean, nobody is prepared for what's coming next. Neither patients, nor doctors, or policymakers, nobody is prepared. Therefore, last November, I came up with a white paper, a free PDF document, in which I summarized the 40 key trends that will shape the future of medicine. I also took a look at which trends will play a more important role for patients or doctors in prevention, diagnostics, therapy, or the long-term consequences. So let me now give you a few quite practical examples about the next few years, but not decades, just few years. Regarding prevention, this is the first microchip that can mimic the physiology of the human lung. Now they have such organ-on-chip solutions for the kidney and the heart, and next year they will try to connect these up, and in 2016, in 2 years' time, they will come up with the first full physiological human model. Imagine that we will be able to test thousands of new molecules on billions of patients in seconds with supercomputers. I will tell my children in a few years' time that, well, kids, when I became a doctor, we tested drugs on people. We gave drug to some of them, and we gave placebo to some others, and we tried to compare the results. That was the barbaric era when I became a doctor in the early 2000 years. It was really unbelievable. Regarding the diagnostics, we heard plenty of things about Google Glass today, but I cannot wait to wear the first digital contact lens through which I can get more information about the world through augmented reality. Plus, as a side effect, a side feature, it measures our blood glucose content from tears, obviously. Moreover, a company in the US called MC10 developed these 2-micron thick chips which you can wear as a tattoo for weeks, and they measure almost any health parameters about yourself constantly. After 2 weeks, these are being budged out. You can replace them for a few dollars. So we won't even use gadgets and devices, but our health parameters will be measured almost constantly. A Japanese group came up with this solution last year. This is a sensor that can be embedded in the tooth, and it measures exactly how many times and for how long the patient eats a day and whether they smoke or not. So it's going to be really hard to lie in the future. Dr. House would love this word, by the way. Regarding the therapy, why cannot we look into the patient or see through the patient right now? Just by looking through the camera of our smartphones, an application could merge the patient's CT scan with the picture we are seeing right now and we could literally zoom in and zoom out of the patient, even before the first operation. The most futuristic scenario is about nanotechnology. What if nanorobots live in our bloodstreams and measuring any biomarkers about ourselves? If I have a heart attack, these measure the biomarkers, they call the ambulance, and release oxygen until the ambulance arrives. I think in a few decades' time, we will stop using the word symptoms because no one will have symptoms. These will come up with the solutions about developing diseases even in time. At the same time, they will cause some really potential threats in bioterrorism. But we have to start discussing these issues in a public way right now. Let's take a look at the long-term consequences. Last year, they were able to print out medical equipment in a 3D format. And now they printed out biomaterials, kidney, heart, and liver tissues by using the living cell as the ink in the printer. So what if we can print out organs in a few years' time, eradicating all the transplantation waiting lists forever? What if we can print out biomolecules, drugs at home? Just imagine the really potential threats about these new technologies. I think a new era of recreational cyborgs is coming towards us, when people can have perfect eyesight, perfect hearing, or even better strength just because they can afford it. At NASA, I could put on an exoskeleton and I was 60 times stronger than myself. It felt good, by the way, but it wasn't really human. In 2 years' time, in 2016, in Switzerland, they will hold the first ever Olympic Bionic Games. It will be called the Cybathlon. And I talked with the organizers. They will have 4 categories in which different kinds of cyborgs will compete against each other, but not against healthy people. They won't let healthy people run against them because they will have no chance. Now, technology doesn't just replace the bad parts or the bad organs. Now it augments our human capabilities. What if it can augment our intelligence just because someone can afford it? Now we have financial differences between people. Maybe we will have now biological ones. That's going to create really awful situations. Based on that, when I talk about these potential threats and possibilities, usually professionals and patients tell me that, well, either we use disruptive technologies and lose the human touch in medicine, or vice versa. They think these have such a relationship. Well, my lifelong mission is to prove them wrong. My mission is to prove them it's not an or, it's an and. Now we must use both. We cannot lose the human touch, the doctor-patient relationship in medicine, because that's the quintessence of the art of medicine. But if we don't want to use more and more, better and better technologies, then we have no chance for giving a good care to our patients. And I'm pretty sure that there is a balance between using both at the same time. Also, people usually say that technology makes us antisocial. This photo was taken at the last Pope election, everyone having now a smartphone, tablet, digital cameras. That's how we live our digital innate lives. Well, I don't think that's technology that makes us antisocial because we used to be just like the same. Really, nothing has changed. Just look at the 2 very similar pictures. I think what makes us antisocial is the lack of skills for filtering the information due to the rising number of technologies. Therefore, we have to acquire new skills about these. We have to be prepared for what's coming next. And I was very glad to come across this image published in a radio magazine in 1925, when they predicted that by the 1970s, doctors would be able to treat and diagnose the patient from their offices at the patient's home through these radio wave machines. Even though we have telemedicine now, we don't have to get to this point when there is no more in-person relationship between patients and doctors. I think we can still find a way to keep the human touch, but use amazing technology at the same time. Let me give you 6 quite clear reasons. The first is that technology now is really efficient. I was a last year medical student 3.5, 4 years ago, and it was my job every single morning to run around with a huge machine, quite expensive one, and do ECG measurements on my patients. It took me an hour to do 6, 7 ECGs. Then I had a paper which I had to attach to the other paper records. It was really amazing, unbelievably amazing. Denise, would you please help me for a second? Could you please hold my mic for a second?
I'll take advantage to say sync your trackers. Sync your trackers. Okay.
Let me show it to you how it works now. This is my very simple smartphone, and Android, obviously. And that's my AliveCore bracket. And together, this is my ECG, one-channel ECG right now. It's clinically approved. It's a medical device. It is stored in the cloud in a safe format, and it's absolutely digital. I can send it to myself or my doctor in PDF format. All my ECGs are measured and stored automatically, and it costs about $200.
How come it's yours and not mine?
Well, nice question. Am I finished? Yeah, thank you so much for the help. Well, that's how simple technology can be. That's how efficient it can be now, by using such small, inexpensive gadgets, being better and better and more efficient by time. My second reason is technology now is available. Last November, I was at a conference in Budapest, hearing the talk of a US lady who had a ski accident many years ago, and she was paralyzed from the waist down. She was sitting in her wheelchair talking about her very emotional story, and at one point she started putting on an exoskeleton. She turned on the computer and she started walking around. Now, it's not science fiction, it's just there in real life. And this lady is meant to take the kickoff at this year's Football World Cup in Brazil in a few days' time, actually. The Exobionics company in the US, in California, develops these exoskeletons, and now 3,000 patients are trying to learn again, to walk again. It's a great technology. My third reason is the reason why most of my colleagues don't like me that much. I think technology is really needed. Maybe the most acclaimed professor in the world might take 50 papers in mind, but IBM Watson can take hundreds of millions per second. We cannot compete with that, and we don't have to compete with that. Let's use that power in the medical decision-making process. And for many months now, Watson has been tested at US clinics in the East Coast, and now they use it in practice. Watson checks the patient's medical records, all the global medical literature, 22 million papers, plus all the textbooks, and it comes up with suggestions, and the doctor makes the final call. And that's how it should work. Now, doctors will be able to focus more on the patient and not just the pure information. I will tell my children that by the time when I became a doctor, neither doctors nor patients actually accessed the information they needed. That was, again, such a barbaric era in the 2009 years. It was amazing. My fourth reason is technology is now at home. I talked with a leader of a company called Telspec in Canada, and they're coming out with a new device this year, the green device, which will measure exactly how many calories, allergens, toxins your food contains right now. So for the first time in history, we will know exactly what we are eating. Just imagine the possibilities for diabetic patients measuring exactly how many carbohydrates they are eating right now. My fifth reason is that it's not science fiction anymore. I met a man in the US, and I think with his state-of-the-art prosthetics, he could do more movements with his new arm, new hand than myself. Plus, he could rotate his wrist around and around without any kind of limitations. And one more thing here, it's about innovation from policymakers. My good mentor, Lucien Klein in the Netherlands, he just got a new position in the Dutch healthcare system, and they had to give it a new name, and they used the Chief Imagineer Officer, from engineer and imaginer. His job is to visualize the future for the Dutch healthcare system, so what they can start implementing right now, today in practice. Well, I'm very practical. Therefore, let me give you some potential ways of development and maybe some solutions. The first is very simple. We have never trained medical professionals to be ready for this kind of world. Never. That's why for 6 years I've been teaching medical students about social media, mobile health, wearable technologies, how we can prepare them for the future. Because by the time they actually start practicing medicine, everything is going to be different. Just imagine 5 or 6 years ago, where was Facebook or social media, mobile health, IBM Watson, Google+, nowhere. So now it's our responsibility as educators to prepare them for the actual future they will face very soon. I also developed an online course for my students, plus, as all of them, without exceptions, are on Facebook, I went to Facebook and I published questions about the course every single day during the semester, and they compete for bonus points. And at the end, the one who wins the competition can skip the exam. But to be honest with you, after all these years developing all these gadgets and solutions for them, the best motivation is still chocolate. After every of my presentation, I offer 2 chocolates for 2 questions or answers. They fight against each other. So even in this futuristic world, we need analog motivational tools. That's how it works. My second point is about health management. plenty of people, obviously not e-patients, but plenty of patients worldwide, they don't care about their health. But when they get a disease, a diagnosis, they go to the modern medicine and ask that, well, now treat me and cure me right now without my activities. Without proper health management, we have no chance for changing healthcare. If it was my solution, I mean, my chance to find a solution, I would teach students from the age of 6 about the healthy lifestyle. Let me show you how I try to keep myself healthy day by day. I use the Withings Pulse, a very simple device that measures my physical activities, my sleep, and my oxygen saturation whenever I want to measure it, just for a few dollars. I've had 3 genomic tests with Californian companies. As a genetics researcher myself, it was a great experience. They sent me these tubes. I provided 10 milliliters of saliva sample. Try it once, that's a challenge. Try to provide 10 milliliters of saliva sample. That takes 40 minutes at least. It's a real challenge. But then you send it back, they analyze your DNA, and they come up with the results. And again, as a geneticist, I had a chance to talk with the genetic counselor, and she told me that, well, I had a bigger chance for diabetes type 2, so I can do 4 things: have a healthy diet, do exercises, 0 smoking, little alcohol. She told me about my lung cancer risk. I can do 4 things: healthy diet, exercises, 0 smoking, little alcohol. She told me about Crohn's disease risk. I can do 4 things. So it wasn't really successful and useful now. But this year I had a new test with my Gentle Labs. They sequenced all my genes, and now I know about all my mutations. I know about all diseases I'm having right now, or will have quite soon. Moreover, I have my genomic data in a very huge text file at home. It's a 70 megabyte text file. So these services are getting better and better, but they still need time. I use Tinke to measure my long and short-term physical fitness. It's really hard to lie to that device about how I'm feeling right now. It's really great. Moreover, I have the smartest blood pressure monitor from Withings. I use it every morning. Sometimes doctors laugh at me that I'm measuring so many parameters. Then I ask them, you measure all these with all your patients every single day. Why not measuring yours? How can you make a decision about your life by not measuring your parameters that you measure for patients several times a day? Since 1997, July, I've been logging scores about my health for more than 6,600 days. Not one day is missing, not one day. Every day I marked a score about my mental, physical, and emotional health, the time I went to sleep, the time I woke up, and the projects I worked on. I have all this data, and sometimes I can make long-term decisions about my health just by looking at the long-term data again. It helps me very much. Moreover, I use the Happy Fork because I don't have much time to eat a day. I have to eat in a more slowly way, so I use Happy Fork to learn how to eat again. It's really embarrassing. It buzzes, it vibrates when you should slow down, and for me it vibrates constantly almost. So it's really hard to learn again how to eat from the basics. I use Lumosity to keep my cognitive skills on the top. I play 5 games for 5 minutes time a day, and through this method I can improve my memory, plasticity, flexibility, and problem-solving skills constantly every single day, only 5 minutes a day. I use Focus at Will to listen to the best kind of music that will generate the best focused brainwaves. So when I have to focus, I can actually focus by listening to these 3 kinds of music generated by neuroscientists. And I use a smartwatch to make sure I don't have the smartphone in front of me in meetings, but I see who calls me, who sends me a text message. Moreover, it wakes me up at the best time when I start to move around in the morning. It's really a great device. And one more thing, I cannot wait to get my interaction, which will, through my brainwaves, it will teach me how to be better at relaxation, how to be better at focusing at the same time. So I cannot wait to get it now. But what I see is that this huge wave of changes is coming towards us, and again, nobody's ready for what's coming next. So I thought that should be my quest, my challenge, to try to help everybody in healthcare and medicine, to prepare them for this very new world. And for this reason, that's the first time I show this cover. I will come up with my book this August, the Guide to the Future of Medicine, like a tourist guide for the future, for patients, doctors, even policymakers, about what's coming next. 25 trends with stories, interviews, and details, and a real guide at the end about what can we do right now to get prepared for this very strange future of medicine and healthcare. So then we will be able to keep the human touch, but also be open to technologies. Usually futurists say that the last invention of history will be the digital brain. When we understand how the brain works, we download it and live forever in a digital format, leaving this biological waste behind full of diseases. I think it's far away in the future, although I have to say that it has already been invented for me, and I call it social media. Whenever I use my online channels, I'm really never alone, and that's an amazing feeling to say that I am never alone. And I think by the time every patient and doctor in the world can say the same line, I am never alone, that's going to be the biggest invention in the history of medicine. Thank you for your attention.